The Valrek were once a proud and powerful species. They had great cities, advanced technology, and a deep understanding of science. Their homeworld, Velrath, was a beautiful planet covered in silver forests and blue oceans. For thousands of years, they lived peacefully, sharing knowledge with other races in the galaxy. But everything changed when the Galactic Council turned against them. The Council, a powerful group that ruled over hundreds of star systems, suddenly declared the Valrek to be a threat to the galaxy. No one knew exactly why. Some said it was because of the Valrek's unique biological abilities. They could heal wounds quickly, resist many diseases, and even survive in harsh environments. Others whispered about a hidden secret, something the Council did not want the galaxy to know. Whatever the reason, the decision was made. The Council ordered every species in the galaxy to hunt down the Valrek and erase them. Their cities were bombed. Their ships were destroyed. Even those who tried to escape to other planets were chased down and executed. The Valrek begged for help. They sent distress signals across the stars, hoping that someone, anyone, would listen. But the galaxy had already turned its back on them. One by one, planets closed their doors. Old allies refused to help, fearing the wrath of the Council. Even peaceful civilizations that once welcomed all races denied them sanctuary. With nowhere left to go, the last survivors of the Valrek hid on a dying world. A cold, barren planet at the edge of known space. Their food supplies were running low. Their ships were broken. And they knew it was only a matter of time before the Council's enforcers found them. Then, one day, the sky burned with fire. A fleet of warships appeared above the planet. But they were not the Council's ships. They were something else. Their design was unfamiliar, sleek, strong, and painted with a strange symbol. The Valrek huddled in fear, expecting another attack. But instead of weapons, the ships sent a message. "This is Admiral Marcus Hale of the Terran Defense Fleet. We received your distress call. We are here to help." The Valrek could not believe it. They had heard of the Terrans, or humans, as they called themselves. They were a young species, new to the galactic stage. Compared to the older civilizations, they were considered weak and inexperienced. The Council barely acknowledged them, seeing them as insignificant. Yet here they were, standing between the Valrek and extinction. Admiral Hale's fleet opened fire, striking down the ships that had been hunting the Valrek. The battle was short but brutal. The enemy forces, unprepared for resistance, were quickly destroyed. As the dust settled, the Valrek received another message. "Your people are safe now. We are taking you home." Home. The Valrek had no home. Their planet was gone. Their people were scattered. But as the Terran ships descended to the surface, bringing food, medical supplies, and soldiers to protect them, a new feeling spread among the Valrek. Hope. For the first time in years, someone had answered their cries for help. For the first time in years, someone had defied the Council for them. And for the first time in years, they were not alone. The Valrek could hardly believe what had happened. For years, they had been hunted, betrayed, and abandoned. No one in the galaxy had dared to help them. Yet now, a species they barely knew, the humans, had come to their rescue. Inside the underground shelters, the last survivors of the Valrek watched in silence as Terran dropships landed on the barren world. The air was thick with dust, the land cracked and lifeless. But for the first time in years, hope had arrived. The Terran soldiers moved quickly, setting up medical stations and distributing supplies. The Valrek were starving, weak, and injured. Many of them were afraid. They had seen too many betrayals, too many false hopes. But the humans did not act like conquerors. They did not demand anything. They simply helped. A young Valrek named Tarek, one of the last remaining leaders, stepped forward to meet Admiral Marcus Hale, the commander of the Terran fleet. The human officer stood tall, his uniform marked with the insignia of Earth's defense forces. His face was calm, his eyes sharp. Tarek had spent years hiding, watching his people die. He had learned to never trust outsiders. But now, as he looked at the human before him, he saw something he had not seen in a long time: determination. "Why?" Tarek finally asked. His voice was rough from lack of water, his eyes filled with suspicion. "Why are you helping us? The Council will come for you. The whole galaxy will turn against you. Why risk everything for us?" Admiral Hale's expression did not change. He spoke in a firm, steady voice. "Because it's the right thing to do." Tarek stared at him. Of all the reasons he expected, that was the one he did not understand. No species in the galaxy had ever done the right thing when it came to the Valric. They had only done what was safe, what was easy. Before Tarek could respond, an urgent message came through the Admiral's communicator. A Terran scout ship had intercepted an enemy transmission. The Council knew. A massive fleet was on its way. Hundreds of warships would arrive soon. They were coming to finish what they had started, to wipe out the Valric once and for all. And now, they would destroy the humans too. The Valric panicked. They had seen what the Council could do. They had no chance against that kind of power. But Admiral Hale simply gave his orders. "Prepare for battle." Tarek could not believe it. "You don't understand," he said. "The Council's forces are too strong. You have to leave. If you run now, they might let you go. But if you stay..." The human admiral looked him in the eye. "We don't run." The word sent a chill through Tarek. No one had ever said that before. The Terran fleet repositioned, forming a defensive line around the planet. Soldiers and engineers worked quickly, setting up planetary defenses. The humans were not preparing to escape. They were preparing to fight. As the first enemy ships appeared on the sensors, the sky darkened with the shadows of war. The Valric watched in silence. They had spent their entire lives being abandoned, being betrayed. But for the first time, someone was standing for them. And for the first time, the galaxy was about to learn what it meant to challenge humanity. The first Council warships arrived within hours. Their sleek, silver hulls gleamed as they exited hyperspace, forming a blockade around the barren world where the last of the Valric and their unexpected saviors, the humans, prepared for battle. A message was broadcast across all frequencies. The voice was cold, commanding, and without mercy. "This is Supreme Commander Valen of the Galactic Council. You are harboring a dangerous species. Surrender the Valric immediately, and we will spare your people." In the command center of the Terran flagship, TDS Valiant, Admiral Marcus Hale stood with his officers. The Valric leader, Tarek, stood beside him, listening to the Council's demand. Hale responded without hesitation. "We don't hand over innocent people to be slaughtered. If you want them, you'll have to go through us." For a long moment, there was silence. Then Valen's voice returned, sharp with disbelief. "You would risk war with the entire galaxy for a species that is already doomed." Hale's expression was grim. "War was never our choice. But if the galaxy stands for injustice, then maybe it's time someone stood against it." The transmission cut off. The first shots were fired. The battle begins. The Galactic Council's ships were larger, more advanced, and greater in number. They believed the battle would be over quickly. But they had underestimated the Terrans. The moment the enemy fleet engaged, the humans struck back with unexpected ferocity. Their warships were smaller, but faster, designed for maneuverability rather than brute strength. Terran railguns, missile barrages, and energy cannons unleashed destruction upon the Council's forces. More Council warships poured in from hyperspace. The numbers were overwhelming. But the humans adapted. Every time the enemy changed formation, the Terran fleet countered with unpredictable strategies. Their pilots fought like wolves, aggressive, fast, and relentless. For the first time in history, the Council's forces were struggling. The truth behind the lies. Meanwhile, on the surface, Valric scientists were working alongside Terran engineers. They were desperate to find out why the Council wanted them erased from existence. Tarek and a human scientist, Dr. Evelyn Carter, analyzed old records recovered from Valrek archives. What they discovered shocked them both. The Council's hatred was never about fear of the Valrek's biology. It was about control. Long ago, the Valrek had discovered a secret, one that threatened the balance of power in the galaxy, a secret the Council had buried for centuries. They had found evidence of an ancient alien race, a species that had existed before the Council was formed, a species that had left behind technology far more advanced than anything in the galaxy today. The Council had destroyed the evidence and silenced the Valrek to keep their control over the galaxy unchallenged. And now, the last surviving Valrek carried knowledge that could change everything. Tarek clenched his fists. They never feared us. They feared what we knew. Dr. Carter's expression was grim. Then we can't let them win. The Council's mistake. As the battle raged, Supreme Commander Valen watched in growing frustration. This was supposed to be an easy victory. The humans were young, untested in major wars. The Valrek were supposed to be weak and broken. And yet, the Terran fleet was still standing. Every battle simulation, every strategy the Council used, the humans found ways to counter them. They fought not like a species that feared war, but one that had mastered it. Then, something happened that Valen did not expect. Other species in the galaxy, those who had long suffered under the Council's rule, began to watch the battle closely. Whispers spread through the networks. The humans are fighting back. They are protecting the Valrek. They are standing against the Council, and winning. For the first time, the galaxy saw that resistance was possible. The Council had ruled with fear for centuries. But now, fear was no longer enough. Admiral Hale stood at the bridge of the TDS Valiant, watching as his fleet continued to hold the line. They could not last forever. The enemy outnumbered them 5-1. But suddenly, new ships began to appear on the battlefield. At first, the Terrans feared it was more Council reinforcements. But then, a message came through. "This is Captain Ralvik of the Solarian Free Fleet. We stand with humanity." Another voice followed. "This is the Garrick Republic. We will not stand by and watch genocide." One by one, independent fleets began joining the battle. The Council's greatest mistake was believing that the rest of the galaxy would always obey in silence. Humanity had sparked something new, hope. And now, the war was no longer just about the Valrek. It was about freedom. The battle was over, but the war had just begun. With the help of unexpected allies, the Terran fleet had forced the Galactic Council's armada to retreat. It was a victory, but not a final one. The Council would return, stronger than before. Everyone knew it. Now, the Valrek had only one hope: Earth, the journey to a new home. As the damaged human and allied ships left the battlefield, thousands of Valrek refugees were transported aboard massive Terran carriers. Many had not seen the sky in years. They had spent their lives hiding underground, surviving in the shadows, waiting for death. But now, they were heading toward a place they never thought possible: a home. Tarek, the Valrek leader, stood on the observation deck of the TDS Valiant, looking at the stars. He was surrounded by his people, exhausted but alive. Behind him, Admiral Marcus Hale approached. "You okay?" Hale asked. Tarek nodded slowly. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to." Tarek turned to him, his expression unreadable. "You don't understand, Admiral. We Valrek, we have always been alone. No one ever fought for us. No one ever cared. And now your people have risked everything for us." Hale sighed. "We don't abandon those in need, Tarek. That's not who we are." Tarek looked back at the stars. For the first time in his life, he believed those words. Arrival on Earth. The journey to Sol System was tense. At any moment, they feared another attack from the Council. But when they finally arrived, what they saw took their breath away. Earth, a planet full of life, oceans, and cities that stretched toward the sky. It was nothing like the barren world they had been hiding on. It was warm, welcoming, alive. As the Valric ships landed on secure Terran bases, the refugees stepped onto solid ground for the first time in years. Many of them fell to their knees, overwhelmed. Others simply cried. Tarek looked at his people. He had never seen them like this before. Safe. The challenge of acceptance, but the fight was not over. News of the Valric's arrival spread across Earth. Some welcomed them with open arms, but others were afraid. Why had humanity gone to war for an alien species? Would the Valric bring destruction to Earth? Would the Council now target humanity directly? Protests erupted in some cities. Politicians argued. Some wanted to hand the Valric over to the Council to avoid war. Others insisted that humanity had done the right thing and had a duty to protect them. Tarek saw the debates on the news screens. His heart sank. Had they only escaped one death sentence to face another? But then, something unexpected happened. A video went viral across Earth, a recording from the battlefield. It showed Terran soldiers fighting alongside the Valric, risking their lives to protect them. It showed Valric doctors saving injured human soldiers during the battle. It showed Tarek standing beside Admiral Hale, refusing to leave his side, even in the worst moments of the fight. The message was clear. They were not just refugees. They were allies. Slowly, public opinion began to change. More humans stepped forward to help. Some opened their homes to Valric families. Others volunteered to help them rebuild their lives. For the first time in history, the Valric were not outsiders. They were part of something bigger. A bond is forged. Weeks passed. The Valric settled into protected zones on Earth, working alongside Terran scientists and engineers. Tarek visited one of the research labs, where Dr. Evelyn Carter was studying Valric DNA. She looked up as he entered. "You're just in time," she said, excitement in her voice. "We've made a breakthrough." Tarek frowned. What kind of breakthrough? Dr. Carter pointed at the screen. "Your people's biology is unlike anything we've seen before. You can heal faster, resist diseases, and there's more." She turned to him, eyes wide. "Your genetic structure holds the key to curing diseases that have plagued humanity for centuries." Tarek stared. "You mean our existence could help your people?" Dr. Carter smiled. "It already has." For the first time, Tarek realized something. The Valric were not just refugees saved by humanity. They were saving humanity in return. The Council's next move, but peace would not last forever. Deep in the core worlds of the Galactic Council, Supreme Commander Valen watched the reports with growing rage. The Valric had survived. Worse, humanity had defied the Council's authority and inspired other species to resist. "This cannot continue," Valen growled. "Earth must be punished. The Valric must be erased." A fleet unlike anything before began to assemble in the darkness of space. The Council was coming, and this time they would not leave until humanity was destroyed. The skies above Earth were calm, but deep in space, war was coming. Across the galaxy, the Council's grand fleet was gathering. Thousands of warships, battle stations, and dreadnoughts formed an unstoppable force. Supreme Commander Valen stood aboard his flagship, his eyes burning with fury. Humanity had dared to defy the Council. They had sheltered the Valric. Now, they would pay the price. "This time, we erased them both," Valen growled. With a single command, the largest invasion force in galactic history began its march toward Sol's system. Earth had little time left. The warning. On Earth, Tarek and Admiral Marcus Hale stood in the underground war room, watching the incoming data. The reports were clear. The Council was sending everything they had. Tarek's claws tightened. "They will stop at nothing." Hale nodded grimly. "We expected this." He turned to his officers. "How long do we have?" A young officer swallowed hard. "Estimates say 3 weeks before the fleet arrives." 3 weeks. Tarek felt a familiar fear creeping in. He had lived this before, waiting for the enemy, knowing survival was impossible. But this time, something was different. This time, he was not alone. Preparing for war, Earth's entire military force mobilized. Every fleet, every soldier, every weapon was ready for the final stand. But they knew they could not fight alone. Hale activated a secure transmission to all corners of the galaxy. His message was simple. The Council has ruled with fear for too long. They think we will break. They think we will surrender. But we are not afraid. Any species that wishes to stand against tyranny, now is the time. Join us, or live forever in chains. At first, silence. Then, a response. The Garrick Republic stands with humanity. The Sularian Free Fleets answer your call. The Zorak clans will fight. More and more species, those who had suffered under the Council's rule, rose up. They had seen what humanity had done, fighting for the Valrek with no reward, standing against impossible odds. For the first time, the Council's enemies had hope, and hope was dangerous. The Valrek's contribution. In the research labs, Dr. Evelyn Carter and her team worked with Valrek scientists on a desperate project. Your people's DNA is the key, she explained to Tarek. We found a way to enhance human endurance and healing using your genetic markers. Tarek was shocked. You mean, we can make your soldiers stronger? Dr. Carter nodded. Not just stronger, able to withstand the Council's energy weapons longer, heal faster, and resist exhaustion. This could turn the tide of battle. The Valrek had once been hunted as a threat. Now, they would become humanity's greatest advantage. The Council's first strike. 2 weeks before the invasion, a Council strike force launched a surprise attack on a human colony in the outer systems. Millions of innocent civilians were at risk. But the humans were ready. A joint human-Valrek strike team intercepted the attack. Valrek warriors, trained by Terran soldiers, fought alongside elite Earth's defense forces. Their combined strengths shocked the Council's forces. The Valrek were faster and had superior instincts. The humans were strategic, unpredictable, and relentless. The enemy fleet was annihilated. The news spread fast. Humanity had not just saved the Valrek. They had turned them into warriors. Now, the Council was afraid. A moment of reflection. That night, Tarek stood on a balcony overlooking New York City, watching the lights below. He had never imagined seeing such a world, full of life, hope, and determination. His people had lived in the dark for so long, but now they had a future. Admiral Hale stepped beside him, thinking about the battle. Hale asked. Tarek shook his head, thinking about what happens after the battle. If we survive, what then? Hale sighed. Then we build, together. Tarek looked at him. And if we don't survive? Hale's expression hardened. Then we make sure the Council regrets ever crossing us. For the first time, Tarek smiled. Humanity was unlike any species he had ever known. They fought not for power, but for principle. And that made them the most dangerous enemy the Council had ever faced. The final countdown. With only a week left, Earth's forces took their positions. Space stations were fortified. Planetary defenses were activated. Fleets from across the galaxy gathered around Sol system, ready for the greatest battle in history. Then the alarms blared. The Council's grand fleet had arrived. Their numbers blotted out the stars. This was it. The final battle had begun. The stars above Earth were no longer visible. They were covered by the largest fleet ever assembled in the history of the galaxy. Thousands of Council warships formed an unbreakable wall of destruction, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. Inside the Terran flagship, TDS Valiant, Admiral Marcus Hale stood on the bridge, watching the enemy fleet on the main display. His officers moved quickly, preparing for what would be the greatest battle in human history. Beside him, Tarek, the Valrek leader, clenched his claws. He had fought many battles, but nothing like this. The Council had brought everything: dreadnoughts, carriers, Planetary siege weapons. Hale turned to his officers. All stations, report. Defensive platforms online. Fleets from allied species in position. Planetary shields holding. Hale took a deep breath. Then we make our stand. The Council's voice echoed across all channels. Humanity, surrender now. You cannot win. Hale smirked. Come and find out. The first shots were fired. The first wave. The Council's dreadnoughts unleashed a terrifying bombardment. Their energy beams tore through space, targeting Earth's defenses. Massive explosions lit up the darkness. But humanity was ready. The moment the enemy attacked, Terran railguns and missile barrages countered with deadly precision. Their weapons were not as advanced, but they were faster, more adaptable. Valric strike teams led elite human fighters into battle, their ships moving like shadows through the chaos. For the first time, the Council was facing a united force that refused to break. But there were too many enemies. Wave after wave of Council warships kept coming. The battle stretched across the solar system, from Mars to the Moon's defense stations. The sky above Earth was on fire. Inside the war room, Hale studied the data. We need to break their formation. Tarek stepped forward. Then we take out their command ship. Hale nodded. We'll have to fight our way through. Tarek's eyes burned with determination. Then let's do it. The mission. A small strike team was assembled. Terran Special Forces and Valrek warriors. Their mission: infiltrate the Council's flagship and eliminate Supreme Commander Valen. The team launched in modified stealth ships, slipping past enemy lines. The Council's defenses were tight, but humans and Valrek had learned how to fight together. As they landed inside the massive dreadnought, the real battle began. The infiltration. The corridors of the Council flagship were cold and sterile. Heavily armed guards patrolled the halls. The Terran Valrek team moved like ghosts, using speed and strategy to eliminate patrols. Every corner was a danger. Tarek led the way, his instincts guiding them through the maze of corridors. Behind him, Captain Sarah Grant, one of Earth's best soldiers, covered their flank. A sudden alarm blared. They had been discovered. Move, move, Grant shouted. Council soldiers poured into the halls, firing energy rifles. The battle inside the flagship erupted. Tarek leaped forward, his claws slicing through enemy armor. Human soldiers took cover and returned fire, their precision overwhelming the Council guards. The team pushed forward, fighting toward the command bridge, the face of the enemy. Finally, they breached the command center. There, standing in the center of the room, was Supreme Commander Valen. His silver armor gleamed under the lights. His cold eyes locked onto Tarek. So, Valen said slowly, "The last of the Valrek stands before me." Tarek growled, "Not the last. Not anymore." Valen smirked. "You think humanity has saved you. They have only delayed the inevitable." He gestured to the battle raging outside. "Look at them, dying for you. Do you really believe they can win?" Tarek clenched his fists. "Yes." Valen laughed. "Foolish." He raised his weapon. But before he could fire, Captain Grant shot first. The blast hit Valen's shoulder, knocking him back. The Supreme Commander snarled in rage, but Tarek was already moving. With one swift strike, Tarek's claws slashed through Valen's armor, sending him crashing to the ground. The Supreme Commander gasped, looking up at the Valrek warrior he had tried to erase from existence. "This is for my people," Tarek said. With one final strike, it was over. The turning point. The moment Valen fell, chaos erupted in the Council fleet. Without their leader, the Council forces hesitated. Their once perfect coordination began to collapse. Humanity and its allies pushed forward. One by one, the Council's warships began to retreat. What was supposed to be an easy victory for the Council had turned into a disaster. And for the first time in history, the Council was losing. The dawn of a new era. As the last enemy ships jumped to hyperspace, The battlefield fell silent. The war was not over, but Earth had survived. On the bridge of the TDS Valiant, Hale looked at the wreckage. They had won this battle, but more would come. Beside him, Tarek stood tall. "Humanity has given my people a future," he said. "Now we stand with you, always." Hale nodded. "Then let's rebuild. Together." And for the first time in history, the Valrek were no longer shunned. They had a home. They had a family. And together, they would shape the future of the galaxy. The Council's mighty fleet had retreated, leaving behind wreckage and destruction across Sol system. The skies above Earth, once filled with the fires of war, were now silent. But the cost of victory was heavy. Admiral Marcus Hale stood on the bridge of the TDS Valiant, staring at the battlefield. His officers moved around him, reporting damage, tending to the wounded, and sending messages across the system. "We did it," whispered one officer. But Hale knew the war wasn't truly over. The Council still existed. They had suffered a humiliating defeat, but they would return, stronger and angrier. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, but the fight for freedom had only begun. Beside him, Tarek, the Valrek leader, watched as recovery ships moved across the battlefield. His people, once hunted and hated, now stood as warriors alongside humanity's greatest soldiers. "We survived," Tarek said. Hale nodded. For now. The aftermath of war. On Earth, celebrations erupted across every city. People cheered in the streets, waving banners of unity. They had defied the Council, defended their home, and protected the Valrek from extinction. But amidst the joy, there was sorrow. Many had fallen. Millions across the solar system had lost loved ones, and entire colonies were left in ruins. The war had taken a terrible toll, and now came the hardest part: rebuilding. In the underground war room, leaders from across the galaxy gathered. Representatives from species that had once feared the Council now looked toward Earth as a symbol of hope. "The Council is wounded," said Ambassador Rinak of the Garrick Republic, "but they are not finished. We must prepare for the next war." Hale nodded. "Agreed. If we don't stand together now, they'll destroy us one by one." For the first time, species that had once avoided each other were now discussing alliances. Humanity's actions had done more than just win a battle. They had changed the balance of power in the galaxy, and the Council knew it. A message from the enemy. Days after the battle, an encrypted transmission arrived from deep space. It was from the remnants of the Council's leadership. The message played across every major screen in Sol system. A shadowed figure, a high-ranking Council official, spoke with cold fury. "Humanity has made a grave mistake. You think this war is over. No, you have only delayed the inevitable. You have chosen to protect the weak, to stand against us, and for that, you will suffer." The warning was clear. The Council was regrouping. They would return. Tarek's claws tightened. They still believe they rule the galaxy. Hale smirked. "Then let's prove them wrong." The Valrek's new home. On a newly built space station orbiting Mars, thousands of Valrek refugees stepped onto their new home. Once they had been hunted, forced to hide in the darkest corners of the galaxy. Now they stood in the light, protected by the very species that had once ignored them. Tarek walked through the station's corridors, watching his people settle in. Valrek children played freely, something that had been impossible for generations. A human engineer approached. "This habitat is just the beginning," she said. "Soon, we'll have entire colonies where your people can live safely." Tarek felt something he had not known in a long time: hope. For the first time in centuries, the Valrek had a future. The birth of the Alliance. On Earth, discussions of a new galactic alliance began. The Council had ruled through fear and oppression, but now, a coalition of free species was rising. Humanity led the charge, not as conquerors, but as defenders. "We will not become like the Council," Hale declared. We will build a future where no species is hunted, where no one is shunned. One by one, species pledged their support. The Valric, the Garrick, the Sularians, the Zorak clans, all those who had once feared the Council now stood together. For the first time, the galaxy had a true resistance. The Council's darkest fear. In the depths of space, within the shattered remains of the Council's homeworld, surviving Council members gathered in secret. They had underestimated humanity. They had never expected a species to fight not just for itself, but for others. "This is dangerous," one whispered. "Humanity's ideas are spreading. Other species are beginning to hope." Supreme Commander Valen was gone, but the Council still had power. "We must crush them before their influence spreads further," another voice growled. "Destroy them before they inspire more rebellion." But they knew that this was not like the wars of the past. Humanity was different. They did not fight for conquest. They fought for principles, and that made them the most dangerous enemy the Council had ever faced. The war was far from over. A new beginning. Back on Earth, Tarek stood with Hale on a balcony overlooking New London. Below them, Valric and human soldiers trained together, preparing for the next battle. "You could have left us," Tarek said. "You could have ignored our suffering, like the rest of the galaxy." Hale chuckled. "That's not what we do." Tarek smiled. "No, it's not." A new era had begun. Humanity had done more than rescue the Valric. They had changed the galaxy forever. And no matter what came next, they would face it together.